What is going on, everybody? So we are less than a month now away from the NFL draft. We have done multiple mock drafts, but it is time to go a little deeper and talk about some more prospects outside of the first round now. And we are going to start off with the wide receivers. Normally I'd start with the quarterbacks, but I think this is a particularly interesting group of wide receivers, a very deep group, and a lot of teams that need wide receivers are going to be very happy with who they get in the second and third round. So hopefully going to talk about some guys that your teams might be looking to add here in the first 2 days of the draft, I would say. Before we dive in, a quick reminder to please hit that like button if you enjoy the video, if you enjoy my content. It's the easiest way to support the channel. Also, there will be no film in this video just for copyright reasons, but if you want access to some of my film breakdowns, you can get that on my Patreon, as well as access to my draft board that will have over 500 player profiles when all is said and done. So without further ado, let's get into it here, starting at the top with DK Metcalf. 6'3", 230 pounds, just built like a Greek god. Now, Metcalf to me fluctuated between wide receiver 1 and 2 until the combine happened and he ran a 4.33, which, you know, I had him at a 4.5. I did not know he had that type of speed. So the upside, nobody is denying. And I don't think many people are going to argue with Metcalf here as the #1 wide receiver. You're getting some Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones comparisons. I don't go that far. I think he's somewhere between like Josh Gordon and Demaryius Thomas, which is obviously a hell of a player. But to me, I don't know if he has the foot quickness like Julio Jones to be a truly diversified wide receiver. I think that Brett Coleman actually put it best. I think you put him with a team where he can run routes that aren't going to stop his momentum, run go routes, crossers, slants. I do think he can run a hitch, but you put him on a team somewhere in that 8 to 20 range, like a Green Bay, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, where there is another guy there that can run the more intricate routes, and then you just let Metcalf go to work at what he does well. Now, for those that have seen my mock draft, I did not actually take Metcalf in my what I would do mock draft in the first round, because there are a lot of red flags here actually with Metcalf. For one, there is that thing that he is kind of a one-trick pony. He does need the right fit, but obviously my #1 wide receiver with a first round grade, I do think he actually ends up going in the first round. I just had a harder time pulling the trigger. My biggest red flag though for him is injuries. He already had one significant injury in college to his neck. There is a track record of guys at this size. We mentioned Demaryius Thomas, Calvin Johnson, even like Kevin White is another physical comparison for him. These just really big muscular guys, you know, for whatever reason, I'm not a doctor, but it does make sense, I guess, that these, you know, bigger dudes just break down a little faster. Maybe it's just the pressure on their bodies. So I do have questions about Metcalf. I also have a personal bias against these 5-star type prospects that are coming out of Ole Miss. You know, this is a program that has had countless scandals paying players to come to play for their program. So, you know, you would expect that they paid Metcalf to come here. And there's just not a great track record of Ole Miss players being great pros. I have questions about the type of men and professionals that program develops. So I have a lot of questions about Metcalf, but the upside is almost irresistible. He seriously could be the best wide receiver in the NFL in a year if everything goes right here. So a highly intriguing player. Really excited to see how his career pans out, because it could go in one direction or the other. So let's move on and talk about Ridley, who is the wide receiver that floated with Metcalf for that wide receiver 1 ranking before the combine. Now, he's not a physical freak. He's not going to blow you away. He didn't necessarily produce at college, which doesn't really bother me because he was in a run-heavy scheme at Georgia that just had a lot of offensive weapons in general. So the production doesn't bother me. His tape reminds me a lot of Davante Adams. Super quick feet, great release, really good hands at the point of attack, a bigger dude, and will almost always make that first guy miss with a juke or a spin or a stiff arm. Just kind of has everything going on as a wide receiver outside of, you know, elite deep threat speed. And I want to stress that he is nothing like his brother Calvin Ridley. Calvin's a little smaller, much faster, just a different player. So I really like Ridley. I feel very safe taking him, which seems strange because this is, by some accounts, a reach. But Ridley and Metcalf are the 2 wide receivers that I have true first-round grades on. And then our next 4 guys have first to second round grades. So let's move on and talk about Parris Campbell. A bit of a controversial pick here because he was not a very well-rounded wide receiver in college. Obviously, ranking him where I'm ranking him, I'm projecting him to be a well-rounded wide receiver at the next level. So he's 6 feet, 205, super quick, runs a 4.31 as well, so he's got that long speed. But you watch him in college, and he was not that well-rounded wide receiver. He's a redshirt senior, so you do wonder why he didn't really develop into that, you know, Ridley type of player where he can run all of the routes. Well, at Ohio State, they really used him in screens, crossers, slants. They had other guys that could do other things. So I am willing, at his size, you know, this is not Andy Isabella or Marquise Brown, who are just like tiny humans. Parris Campbell's a big dude who can flat out run. And if you can get him to learn how to run routes now in a system that is encouraging of that, as opposed to just limiting what you're asking him to do, the upside is absolutely incredible for Parris Campbell. We're talking about the upside of like Odell Beckham here, seriously, with that speed and size. I know Odell's a little shorter, but you get the point. So I'm willing to take a risk that you put him in a situation with the right coaches that he can develop, because I don't really have questions about his hands. I don't necessarily think he runs bad routes. I just don't know if they really asked him to do that. So you do need to coach him up. You are projecting a little bit here, but I love the upside in Parris Campbell. Now, number 4, Kelvin Harmon. He is not going to pop, at the combine. But you watch his tape, reminds me a lot of Michael Thomas. 6'2", 221, probably the best hands in this class, at least on a consistency basis. Not going to make the wow catches that Metcalf makes, but he does have excellent hands. Pretty good after the catch, excellent release, runs good routes. Just a super solid player, and honestly probably has the least question marks out of any wide receiver in this entire list, and that kind of creeps him up because you know what you're getting. You know, maybe not the highest upside, but you take him, you know, probably early second. I have a first to second round grade on him, but because of the depth at wide receiver here, you probably don't need to take him in the first. And just like Michael Thomas, in the second round, you plug him right in there, and you know exactly what you're getting. So I love Kelvin Harmon. Number 5, Marquise Brown. Super high risk, high reward pick here. When he's on the field, he is super similar, if not identical, to Deshaun Jackson. Similar size, 5'9", 166. So at that frame, you're going to have questions about his durability, which has been a big problem for Deshaun Jackson as well. I literally think you're getting a Deshaun Jackson clone in Marquise Brown. And Brown already had an injury here in the pre-draft process, a Lisfranc fracture, which is not a small injury. So anywhere late first, early second, you're going to grab Marquise Brown. He's going to be an elite deep threat, awesome catch and run guy. I just have questions on if he can stay healthy, which I think are very legitimate. Now, number 6, A.J. Brown, fairly similar to Kelvin Harmon. You do have, if any knocks on A.J. Brown, it's the same thing I said about Ole Miss with DK Metcalf. A.J. Brown fitting that profile of a guy that was probably paid to come, play at Ole Miss. Now, I don't have anything against A.J. Brown personally, and I really like his tape. And again, a first to a second round grade here, super deep class. Would have no problems grabbing him in the first, early second, wherever it may be. This guy is a guy that played a lot in the slot at college, but really no reason he can't step outside. He's an above average athlete. He's not like extremely explosive. He's really, really thick at his size, super hard to bring down, gonna have a nasty stiff arm and good run after the catch ability. So I think that's why you like him in the slot, just because he's not your typical slot guy who's gonna get beat up. He's gonna catch the ball and deliver the blow, which is pretty rare for a wide receiver. So I love A.J. Brown as well, and is one of the safer picks here. I just don't know exactly if he has that upside to be a dominant outside wide receiver. Then number 7 here, N'Keal Harry. A lot of Harry truthers out there. A lot of people say Harry is the best wide receiver in this class, which is fine. I don't hate N'Keal Harry. I just like the upside of the other guys better. Now, the biggest criticism of Harry is that he's not really a separator. He's a catch and traffic guy. He's pretty good after the catch as well. He does have really good foot quickness, but I just don't really see the separation here. And a lot of N'Keal Harry truthers are going to get mad about that. And, when he ran a 4.53 at the combine, they were like, see, he is fast. Well, I had him as a 4.56 estimated. So I just, he's a very good wide receiver. He's going to make some incredible catches at the next level. And I think he's a really good value here in the second round because of the depth in this class. But as a first round pick, I just don't see it myself. The league is trending towards receivers that can be elite separators. And I don't see that necessarily in N'Keal Harry. So this is going to sound like a pessimistic outlook on Harry. I do like him a lot. I've got a early second round grade on him. I just like the other guys a little better, mainly because of their ability to separate. Now, number 8, Deebo Samuel, probably the surest thing in this top 10. It's just a matter of upside here with Deebo Samuel. He's probably a slot guy. He can step outside. He's got decent long speed, not elite by any means. Pretty good hands, really good run after the catch guy. I've got kind of a unique comparison for him. It's Pierre Garçon. Just the size kind of reminds me of it. Garçon was always, when he was healthy in his prime, pretty good after the catch as well. So a really safe guy. Going to be a stud as a second round pick if he lands in the right spot. Just a matter of upside there for Deebo Samuel. Then number 9, Andy Isabella, who has just skyrocketed in the pre-draft process, and I think it's totally justified. He is not your typical white slot receiver. He is much closer to that of Brandon Cooks. Now, those that are familiar with this channel, I've said Brandon Cooks is extremely overrated. Well, if you're getting Brandon Cooks in the second round on a cheap 4-year deal, he's not overrated. He's an absolute bargain. So Isabella is a dominant deep threat. He's extremely fast. He's got great hands. He's very quick and can play in the slot, but you would be underutilizing him in my opinion, and you're not taking him in the second to play in the slot. So it's going to take a team to kind of break the white wide receiver stereotype to grab him this early, but I do think he is worth this pick, and if used correctly, he can be a, top 10 deep threat at the next level who can also play in the slot. And then number 10 here is a player I did a profile on in the past, Preston Williams, under the radar guy, physically similar to AJ Green, and his tape is incredible from Colorado State. Now you've got off the field questions here. He's kicked out of Tennessee, domestic violence history, but seriously as a player he's very impressive, and if he ended up being the best wide receiver out of this class, well, there's a lot of good wide receivers here, but you get my point. He has crazy upside, but you need him to land in a spot where he can focus on football, focus on his craft, and just be a football player. So rating the player, he is a top 10 player. There's a couple guys here moving on that I want to talk about. Miles Boykin, just a raw freak athlete, never really reached his potential as a senior at Notre Dame, but you're taking just the tools and hoping you can coach him up and turn him into that elite number 1 wide receiver type. Then we got Hakeem Butler. A lot of people like this player, 6'5". He's not slow by any means at that size. I've got questions about his quickness. I see him as a deep threat and a red zone threat. So I like Hakeem Butler. I just think he's a little one-dimensional. And, a lot of times these jump ball guys are flashy in college, but in reality it just doesn't translate at the next level because NFL corners and safeties are just bigger, faster, stronger. You can't maximize on your physical abilities. So I do like Hakeem Butler, but number 12 on my board. And then the 13th guy that I'll talk about, and then I think there's a drop-off after this player, Metcalf Harmon out of Georgia. Just a burner, high-end slot guy, a great kick returner, someone that's on the upward trajectory, a true junior who was underutilized in that run-heavy scheme at Georgia. There's a chance you're getting, a freak, guy that at 5'10", 187 isn't necessarily limited to the slot. He has the upside to go and be a deep threat at the next level and not just a catch and run guy, but at worst you're getting a really good catch and run guy there in Metcalf Harmon. So that is the top 10 with a little extension into the top 13 because I do think there's a teardrop after Hardman. Again, guys, please hit that like button. It helps me out more than you know. Really looking forward to talking to you guys in the comments as well. So cheers as always, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.